choosing the long for a poor man's covered call. Believe it or not, we get this question all the time. Our research team decided to go out and maybe answer this question. Choosing the long for a poor man's covered call. You want to bet? Want to make a guess to what delta that would be, Tony?
I think he's gonna. Oh man, 30-ish delta is what hits my head. I think he's gonna go a little less, and I'm gonna say 26.
You're gonna say 26 deltas?
Yeah.
No. For the long strike.
Oh, the long strike. I'm sorry. Okay, I thought I was looking at the short strike. 70 delta would be my default. I'm hoping I'm correct.
Let's take a look. Let's go to the next slide. A covered call means selling a short out of the money call while holding 100 shares of stock, or the underlying, whatever it is. This strategy generates additional revenue compared with holding shares under any situation other than a sudden spike in the underlying, where it still isn't exposed to a loss. So 100 shares can be quite capital intensive. A poor man's covered call, PMCC, recreates a similar P&L dynamic by using an in-the-money long call in place of shares. But how do we decide what long call to use, what short call to sell, and what kind of differences? So if you buy a stock, it's 50-50, let's just say. If you do a covered call, it's probably like 65-35 because you're selling, you're collecting some premium, so you're increasing your probability of profit. That's all it is. You're capping your upside also.
Yep.
So that's why people do it. It's a very, it doesn't require any additional capital, gives you a higher probability of success. Everything's good. There's no downside to this, except you cap your upside. So let's take a look and see what the team came up with is, hey, where do I want to place my long in the money call? And, what should I do with my out of the money call? Let's take a look. So we did 15 years of data, SPY data, and we looked at a variety of covered call, a variety of poor man's covered calls, 45 days to expiration, 30 delta calls. That's all the short options. Okay. So all the long options, we're going to use varying, but the short option is 30 delta. You good with that? I'm good with that.
I'm good with that. Yes. Yeah.
The 30 delta is probably where Tony and I would be. Sometimes we say 35, sometimes we say 25 or 30, but 30 delta is in the middle.
Yep.
For the long calls, 60, 70, 80, and 90 delta strikes with the same expiration. And then we looked at 60 days and 120 days or 1 year to expiration. And all the positions were closed when the short option expired. So 60, 70, 80, or 90. You still want to go with 70?
I do.
Okay. We also included rich man's covered calls, the results from using 100 shares of SPY in place of the long call at the same time frame, just so you could see the difference. Okay, so we called it a rich man's call. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so for starters here, the first one, and you can see them here. This is the total of everything.
Sure.
So 45 days to expiration. Here's the 60 delta, 70 delta, 80 delta, 90 deltas, and then using the underlying stock. And you can see that the bigger the delta, it's a marginal change. But obviously, if you buy the stock, you're going to do a little tiny bit better. And if you right where Tony said is right in the middle, okay? The average P&L, virtually the same. There's almost no difference across the board. And then the average capital requirement, why would you use $18,000 when you're making the same amount of money with the same win percentage, basically?
Right.
And where Tony said the 70 delta is probably right where I would be as well, because your average P&L is perfect, 27, and your capital is on the second to lowest number.
I guess there's no wrong answer when it works.
There's no wrong answer.
Right.
No, there's never been a wrong answer here. It's all about capital efficiency and getting yourself to a decent number. That's all it is. The key here was that the rich man's covered call wasn't that much more impressive. So what we did here is we looked at the long call, and again, we're just comparing all of these across the board. Can you go back one slide, John? Yeah. This is the 45 days to expiration, because I didn't point that out. So the first slide is 45 days to expiration. On the second slide, it's all the same numbers, but we did the 60 days to expiration on the long call. So we just extended the duration on long call a little bit to see if the numbers changed. And the reality was it was basically all the same. So we went and we took it a step further, and go to the next slide, John. We went to the 6-month long call. Now, this is when you start to get into what we call leaps. The interesting thing here is that the win percentages basically didn't change at all. The average P&L did not change at all. The capital requirements went up. So the capital requirements were about half if you were at 45 or 60 days than they are if you were at 6 months. But none of the other numbers, I don't know if this is surprising to you or not, none of the other numbers changed at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Okay. Let's go to the next slide. So here we went out 1 year and we wanted to see if the numbers changed. And the win percentage did not change at all. From 1 year to 6 months to 60 days to 45 days, nothing changes with the win percentages. The average P&L, surprisingly, if you go out 1 year, doesn't change either. Not at all. What does change?
Oh, go ahead.
What does change is the capital required. So again, if you went 45 days, it only required $800. If you went 60 days, it was like $1,000. If you went 6 months, it went up to like $1,500. And now at a year, it's $2,500. So, and this is all using the 70 delta long call. So the difference here is the longer you go out in time, the amount of money that you put up, that's what changes, the capital efficiency of the trade. The rich man's number never changes. It's just all the people using calls. Do you know why that is? Because you're paying more for the call. The actual pricing model, the buying power requirement model doesn't change one bit. The difference is the option that you're buying is way more expensive. If you go out a year, you're going to pay, 10 times what you're going to pay for 45 days on the long call. That's all it is.
Understood.
There's nothing else to it. You're just paying more money for the long call. It's not like the industry's charging you more money. Let's go to the next slide. So some of the takeaways here. Writing covered calls and SPY has generally been a successful strategy over the past decades. Sure, it's basically worked into perpetuity because we've always had positive drift and the market goes higher. Poor man's covered calls were able to recreate almost all the success of being long stock while requiring vastly less capital. When choosing a long call to form your poor man's covered call, it was hard to go wrong, but the 70 delta and the 60 days to expiration provided a nice balance of capital efficiency without giving up profits or reliability compared to the rich man's covered call. And then due to the length of the study, expect current SPY costs to be higher, but the relative differences between the strikes and expirations should remain. There's a couple of really good takeaways from this that it's a wonderful piece. The most important thing is if you're looking for what strike to sell, it's around 30 delta. If you're looking for what strike to buy, you can we use the 70 delta and that made the most sense. If you're looking for the perfect duration that is the most reasonable relative to the credit you collect from a capital usage standpoint, it's 60 days. If you go out to a year, there's no difference. It just uses more capital. All the other numbers stay the same. I think this was the first time we did an in-depth study of the poor man's covered call this way. And I mean, for me personally, it's very helpful.